Good evening and welcome back to The Weird and the Wonderful with Strange Bones. So tonight we've got an interesting one starting up, and to a certain degree it raises a couple of questions, of course. Now, as you know, on this channel we make a point never to particularly promote nor deride anybody's beliefs, belief system, culture, etc., etc. But this one seems to be very much coming from a particular culture, the Western cultures. So I would ask if anybody has similar such stories from a completely different culture. It would certainly be interesting to get comments and to hear from you. So yeah, should any of that occur, let me know, because I would be very, very interested. But that said, I'm going to remind everybody that on this channel, as I say, we have one rule, and that is don't be rude. And with that, we neither promote nor deride anything that we speak of on the channel. We are merely looking at what is out there for our own interest and curiosity. But with that, you can agree, you can disagree, you're encouraged to comment as much as you like, absolutely. And obviously share lots and lots of likes, because after all, likes help and they're free to give. If you can do, go ahead, subscribe, give gifts and do all the good stuff too, because that's the channel going. But that said, one of the big things in urban legends, and something that has in fact been, I would say, part of popular storytelling for many, many, many years, is the idea of deals with the devil. I was reminded of this from a rather interesting video that was watched by my fiancée, and she shared it with me, and I think it's definitely an interesting topic to cover. But I will point out as well, though, that it implies that you do believe in the devil. So you would have to be of an Abrahamic religion at the very least to believe in such a thing. And of course, as you know, in the Abrahamic traditions, he's the bad guy. So making a deal with the devil is obviously a bad thing, something you should not do, apparently. And in some cases, of course, it's gone very well, and in some cases it's gone very badly. And I started looking into the whole story, and it seems it's happened a lot. Aiden, hi, how are you doing? I hope you're having a fantastic evening. I don't know if you know of any interesting stories like this, but hopefully, if you don't, these will interest you. Well, happy birthday to you, Aiden. I hope you are having a good one. Yeah, it's a good time of year for a birthday, I think. Fresh start in every way. Fantastic. So, bless you indeed. So, we've probably all heard that popular song, bit of country and western. The devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. He was in a bind, was way behind, willing to make a deal. It's definitely a catchy song, and a very good one in, if you like your country and western type of things. So I'm sure you've heard it and you know it. Spooky, welcome, 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 welcome.
Fuck, dude, is my rock okay?
Good to see you. It seems that all the usual suspects are joining. How are you?
Hey,
Are you in
I'm
fine
good. How you
form?
doing?
I'm good, thank you, thank you. So I have a question for you. You,
Okay.
you're a fellow that likes his music, do you not?
No, not really.
Are you not a
But
music
yeah,
fan?
I like music. I like 80s and 90s.
It's still music.
Uh,
Now, you've heard the song The Devil Went Down to Georgia, right?
no, I can't recall it.
Have you not heard it? Well, basically, it's about this young guy in Georgia in America who was a fiddle player that meets up with the devil and makes a deal with him to either win a fiddle of gold, or if he fails the competition playing against the devil, then the devil gets his soul. And it's a pretty cool song. It's got a great catchy tune and all of that, as you can imagine. And in the song, in the story, he does win and gets his fiddle of gold. But it comes up then to the question of what is the story of making a deal with the devil, and who has been said to have made a deal with the devil. And so I did a bit of a dive into some research on this, and it's a very popular story trope. And interestingly enough, a lot of very real people have been accused of it. Now, it's termed, interestingly enough, as a Faustian deal. And the reason for that is not the earliest story, but certainly the most popular story. And that's the story of the famous Dr. Faustus. Now, of course, the Faustus story is not a real story. It is just a story that was written about such things. But it was the most popular at its time, and it certainly influenced everything else. So the story goes on about Johann Georg Faust, a doctor in the 16th century in Germany, an alchemist who sought the ultimate knowledge and power, and he traded for 16 years of service to give him the greatest skills and abilities, and he got it. And of course, at the end of 16 years, the devil arrives and claims his soul, and of course, ends everything. And that's where we get the idea of the Faustian deal. But, this
Sounds
is...
like
Sounds right?
the same story that, well, not exactly the same story, but Eve, the devil told her, eat that fruit and you'll have unbelievable knowledge or something like that.
Well, you are 100% correct, because that is absolutely, well, it's not the only early story, believe it or not, but it's one of the earlier recorded stories of exactly that. And of course, as we know, one of the sort of tropes is you get exactly what you bargained for, but not at all anything that you would have wanted. And that's exactly what she got. Exactly what she wanted, but not what she really wanted. So that's the sort of the underlying legend, if you will, of the Faustian deal. Yes, you get, but you lose far more. But throughout history, there's been a lot of people accused of it, from the famous violinist Niccolo Paganini, Robert Johnson, the legendary blues guitarist, and even, believe it or not, Oliver Cromwell. And there's a whole collection of stories, some based on real people, some based just on stories. and folk tales. Jonathan Moulton, the American colonist who apparently managed to beat the devil initially. And of course, the very, very important point is initially, because that's the point. And so I thought it would be fun and interesting to go through some of these stories, be they new or old. So let's have a look at the trope and the ideas. And we know that Dr. Faustus, which was a play, a tragedy in a way, in the Elizabethan era by Christopher Marlowe, which was based on German stories, in fact, about deals with the devil, which would have, of course, been based on earlier stories and earlier stories going to the Bible, going to more and more and more. So Marlowe wrote the story, and this scholar, Dr. Faustus, appears in this play, which was performed first around 1594, which is pretty old, you know, not bad, not bad. And it follows Faustus's rise as a magician through his pact with Lucifer, facilitated by the demon Mephistopheles, and his ultimate downfall as he fails to repent before his damnation. So there are two major versions that have survived, a shorter one and a longer one, which has additional things which might not have come from Marlowe himself. So it's a blend of classical tragedy and Elizabethan drama, and it's lasted very well. We actually performed this play when I was at school, if you can believe that. So it stuck around as a very popular play. We know that this play was performed all over the world, which is pretty impressive, with all kinds of additions and more. But the play itself, though it was a made-up story, is based on legends that are at least said to be true. Now, in all fairness, it does imply that you believe in the devil. And to believe in the devil, you absolutely therefore have to come from one of the Abrahamic religions. But the concept of making a deal with something dark, I'm not Christocentric, then do let me know. I would be interested in hearing more. But yeah, so the key people, of course, is Dr. Faustus, the protagonist, who, interestingly enough, is also not only a doctor of alchemy, but a doctor also of theology, as well as law, medicine, philosophy, and so on. And he wants to master necromancy. So too much curiosity, which is another theme you find often that will catch you out. Think'st thou that I, who saw the face of God and tasted the eternal joy of heaven, am not tormented with 10,000 hells in being deprived of everlasting bliss? O Faustus, leave these frivolous demands which strikes terror to my fainting soul. It really is a very, very good play with some incredibly dramatic lines. But the basic theme that you will get all that you could possibly want through skill, knowledge, and more through one little deal. But of course, how much will you pay in the end? So yeah, very, very interesting story and a good one. But moving into other stories or the ideas behind, it does absolutely, as you pointed out quite correctly, come up way earlier than the play. We just get the name from the play. It's a traditional sort of Christian viewpoint that turns up in the Old Testament, which is, of course, of the Jewish religion as well, showing how far back it actually goes. A story of warning, I suppose, in many ways. It's not always the devil himself that is dealt with, but varying demons and tricksters, if you will, that are after your soul. Very often the person making the pact tries to outwit the devil, but loses in the end, because the ultimate theme is any bargain with evil will always lead to your doom. So naturally, there is that. There's a famous one where you get a comic twist, in a way, in the stories where you get exactly what you asked for, such as the man who sold his soul for eternal life, because then he would never have to give up his soul, because he will live it forever. But he commits murder and is sentenced to the rest of his living days in prison.
So, you said making deals with evil,
Yes.
but so not just the devil itself, but evil in what way?
Well, it all depends on, firstly, whether or not you believe in the devil. So, assumedly, if your cultural religion doesn't believe in the devil as we know him, it would be some form of evil being, dependent on your culture. Secondly, it's not always with the devil directly. So
you have to be religious in some way, not just an atheist who makes a deal with some other evil atheist.
well, it would have to be some form of power that could provide you with things that are not humanly gettable.
Okay. So a demon.
Yes, as you see, in fact, Faustus himself in the play doesn't make a deal with the devil directly, but does so via the demon Mephistopheles.
Okay. Can a demon make a deal with another demon?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I suppose you would have to ask a demon, or maybe a religious expert on the matter of demonology. Assumedly, they're supposed to be intelligent.
You can deal with something evil, but what if you are even more evil?
Well, then I suppose you were damned already, so it wouldn't count. The whole point of it, ultimately, is whether or not evil gets your soul. So it's a warning
Okay.
against turning to evil, by and large, as a trope. If that makes sense. So say you have no ability at all to play football and you really, really want to be a professional footballer, you could make a deal with a demon who could give you that ability that you would never otherwise have. But it will cost.
What makes the demon evil, actually?
Well, here's the thing. Okay. And I find this to be an interesting sort of question, because ultimately, if you look at what they call technical demonology, you get angels, which are the good guys, right? Normally, But you actually get three kinds of angels. And that's actually kind of critical when you get into the whole idea of angelology, if you will. Because Lucifer isn't a demon. Lucifer is an angel, but he's a fallen angel. So one that turned to evil. And then, of course, you have the Watchers, which in angelology are the ones that they didn't side with Lucifer. So they didn't go to evil, but they refused to go back to heaven. So they were punished. So they are neutral in a sense, which I suppose, dependent on your viewpoint, is as bad, apparently. Now, of course, it implies that you do believe in angels, but then it also implies that demons are a completely different thing. So what's the difference between an angel and a demon, whether fallen or otherwise? Not sure, but at least in the literature, all devils and demons are bad. Some say there is only one devil, and that's the fallen angel Lucifer. But then that doesn't tie in with the New Testament, because as you know, in the New Testament, Jesus encounters a man that was possessed by the devils known as Legion, and he cast them out into pigs. So it implies that there are many devils and many demons, which are something else entirely. But in all of the stories, devils and demons are always evil. So either that's just what we call the ones who've become bad, so angels remain the good ones and demons are the bad ones. So it's a title more than
Can you
anything.
tell me why was Lucifer abandoned?
Because he rebelled. He refused to do as he was told.
For example?
Well, you gave the example in the first thing. He was the one that told Eve to eat the apple. That was an example of his rebelling. He wanted more, and he was told, mind your own business, do your job. And of course, he was like, no. So he refused and was thrown out of heaven by Michael, who is the enforcer.
But he was troubled. He was troubled. He was neglected. God didn't give him more.
That's an argument. So the story of...
He's a victim. He wanted attention.
That's a very, very good point. Now, in the story, first of all, and here's where you do get inconsistencies, angels are not supposed to have free will. That's where humans are different. We have free will, angels don't. But then, of course, if angels don't have free will, how did Lucifer rebel? Because, yeah, that's contradictory. So angels must have free will, so that they can rebel.
And who's to say he was evil? It sounds like he actually wanted to play a what he probably thought, a harmless prank on these mud creatures.
Well, no, he rebelled in ways like that prior to the Garden of Eden thing. So he was thrown out of heaven before humanity was made. But he continued in that vein. But the point is then, if angels don't have free will, then he must have been made to do what he did by God. So he's been punished for what God did, which seems a bit rude. Secondly, if they did have free will and he chose to do different and therefore were thrown out, it seems that God is gaslighting rather hard. So when it comes to angelology, it's a very debated and debatable sort of set of stories.
But nothing makes sense to me. That's why I don't know. believe in this shit because, yeah, if God was all knowing, then he would have known that Lucifer would have rebelled even before he made Lucifer.
Well, that's the other thing. And as we say, that how do we explain if angels have no free will? He therefore made Lucifer deliberately knowing that he was going to make him then go and rebel. So all of it goes back to blame God. Now, just in full fair disclaimer, in formal and original Christianity, belief in angels is not a requirement of faith, interestingly enough. That's additional stuff that we can say is largely apocryphal. It's an add-on to mainline Judaism, and it's an add-on to mainline Christianity. So it's not actually part of major theology, but many.
Can you make a deal with God?
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
It seems like a lot of people try to make a deal with God. I mean, they sit and pray every night and
Yes.
sometimes tell them I'll do good and please help me through situations and things like that.
I absolutely do agree with you. And very, very interestingly, I used to know a guy who was a Jesuit priest, and he was one of the world's top biblical scholars, and I studied under him for a while. And one day he said to me, I don't pray. And I said to him, but dude, you're a priest, you know, isn't it like part of the job? And he said, no, it isn't. If you think about it, prayer is when we go, God, I would like this and that, and in return, I will be good. He says, what you're meant to do is just say, I praise you, God, and I commit my life to you. And after that, it's up to you, God, to give me what you think I need, which is not the same. And I found that to be very interesting. When I asked him why, that was his exact argument. He says, every time we do what we call prayer, we're basically saying, dear God, can I have this and this in return for my worshipping you?
Yeah.
So he said, no, I don't pray, not in the modern understanding of prayer. And I avoid it for that reason, which was fair, if you think about it. And if you look at the way that you are taught to so-called pray, if you take the Paternoster, our Father who is in heaven, your name is holy. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, all you're asking for is your basic requirements that God gives. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses only as much as we forgive. So give us what is only due to us as much as we have earned it. Which is another thing people forget, you know, that you have to forgive too, okay? As we forgive those who trespass against us, lead us not into temptation and deliver us from evil. The things that, if you follow God, that's what he will do for you. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. By the way, that addendum at the end there is not part of the prayer. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever, amen, is not part of the Our Father. That's a later addition, interestingly enough. Hey there, Endless Thoughts. Welcome, welcome.
The other day, Afrikaners was celebrating this day, and then I learned a lot about it.
Yes.
It was a battle about the Blood River,
Yes.
and apparently they made a deal with God,
Yes, the day
and
of
God
the vow.
helped them.
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. The day of the vow is they prayed and said, God, if we can win our way through this, then we will remember it forever. And they have done. It is very much part of the culture. But yes, that is a deal with God, and human beings make deals with God all the time.
Yeah.
It's a very human thing. Is it a right thing, though, is another whole question.
But what does God take in return?
Well, that's another big question. What does God want from us?
He takes your soul.
Yeah, when you put it like that, you know, when you start putting the whole idea of religion under the microscope, it doesn't hold up very well.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, these are the stories. So let's look at a few of them and see if we can come up with answers. So we know that the idea of a deal with evil in order to gain something absolutely is full on in all sorts of Western culture. Whether or not it is part of other cultures, I would like to know more, but we know that according to certain witch trials under the Burning Times, which we know were a big political thing anyway, and real witches weren't burnt at all, which makes sense when you look at the time it happened and more. According to them, when you made a deal, an indelible mark was put upon you where the devil had touched you, and the mark could be used as proof to determine that a pact was made. On that spot, if you're hearing screams in the background, the kids are playing games, and apparently they're not doing so well. So there's a certain amount of dying going on. Nevertheless, so on the mark, you can't feel any pain. And that's where you got what they called pricking. So they would take a pin and stab you all over your body. And if they found a spot where you can't feel that they've poked it in you, then it's proof that you made a deal with the devil. Now, of course, there were certain, shall we say, unscrupulous fellows that used pins that were retractable because they were after your money. Because the person who proved you were a witch naturally got all your stuff. So it was a big money-making scheme and a political scheme in many ways. But nevertheless, this was the story. So it was also apparently something that needed to be written. So you had to summon said demon, whichever version it was. And once summoned, it was a written act, and it had to be usually signed with your blood. Blood, as we know, is said to be very, very powerful, and therefore important in pacts. We know throughout history this has been the case, the idea of blood brothers and so on and so forth. So it's not a surprise that this was done. Some did say that you could use other blood, like animal blood, and some said red ink was sufficient. I suppose it's a matter of opinion there. We know that certain acts were required to cement your agreement, and things like the Lemegeton Clavicula Salomonis, or the Lesser Key of Solomon, gave a detailed list of signs you needed to use, diabolical signatures, and of course, which demons you could call for what. So a whole collection thereon. The Malleus Maleficarium, the famous hammer against witches, discussed several alleged instances of pacts with the devil, especially concerning women, funnily enough, because almost all witches were women, apparently. Demonology says as well that there was a specific day, month, hour to call a specific demon. So you've got to do it at the right time, in the correct way for different demons. And different demons are chosen dependent on what you're trying to get out of the deal. In the narrative of the synoptic gospels, Jesus himself is offered a series of bargains by the devil, where he's promised worldly riches, glory, and more in exchange for serving the devil rather than God. And he rejects all of them and then goes on to be the Messiah. But of course, he is certainly not the only one. Now, in popular culture, this idea has come up, and we find it turning up in a ton of novels. The Brothers Grimm have got a fairy tale called Bearskin, where a man gains fortune and a bride by a pact with the devil. We have Anton Chekhov's story, The Bet, which is a bet made with the devil. The Black Spider, which is by Jeremias Gotthelf in 1842. The Choosing Game, which is a fiction story as well. There's the story of the Demon Pope, which is based on an alleged true story. But you've got a whole ton of different stories that certainly have come out all the way from Faust to Goethe, and even Isaac Asimov, believe it or not, who's a famous science fiction writer, had a story like that. Anne Rice, in her famous Memnoch the Devil, covered the idea as well. Oscar Wilde, in The Picture of Dorian Gray, which was an absolutely brilliant and very creepy story. Hey! Huge thanks for the share to Spooky, and thanks for the achievement of the live goal from Endless Thoughts. That's very, very kind of you. But the story keeps going and has been rewritten and rewritten many, many, many times all the way through history. In films, you've got things like Angel Heart from 1987. You've got American Satan from 2017, Angel on My Shoulder, 1946, Bedazzled, 1967, and remade in 2000, which goes to show. 2004, you had Constantine, which of course was an absolutely brilliant series, and you do see Constantine making a deal with Satan. So Constantine, of course, managed to get out of it, and thereafter is trying to redeem his soul, and that's the bottom theme of the whole Constantine story, both in the books, in the comics, and in the movies. Of course, more modern that we got from 1999, you had End of Days. You've got Ghost Rider, 2007. Of course, Johnny Blaze sells his soul to Mephisto, which is yet another one of the different demons. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, 2009, was also exactly the same. Phantom of the Opera, of course. Sleepy Hollow, which made into the movies and all. And of course, 2006, you have Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny, which was done with Jack Black, which was a hugely hilarious story. 2015, The Witch, So yeah, there's a whole ton of different stories that have come up. Friday the 13th and more. But what about the real stories? It seems urban legend has a whole lot. You've got the Hellbound Train by Robert Bloch, and it's definitely one that will creep you out. If you sold your soul to the devil for a pocket watch that could stop time at your happiest moment, would it be a good deal? You can be happy forever, and the devil can never collect because you'll be immortal. But when you stop time, when do you choose? The day you got married? Then you'll never have kids. When your first child is born, you never get to watch them grow up. Not so easy after all. So that's an interesting one. Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary got pregnant and had that dream where you discover your newborn is something monstrous, and Rosemary discovers that her true baby daddy is Beelzebub himself, the Lord of the Flies, and her husband traded her firstborn soul so they could be rich. And of course she wasn't asked in the story, so there you go. You've got the picture of Dorian Gray. If you've never read it, just go ahead and do it. So Dorian Gray wanted to be beautiful and wonderful and charming and live forever. And so he's given a picture which is painted. This is in the 1800s this was written. But nobody was allowed to ever see it, or it will break the deal. But anything that ever happens to Dorian, instead of actually happening to him, would happen to the painting. So he stays young forever, he can't get sick, and of course he goes on this whole hedonistic pursuit of massive amounts of drugs and sex, and he never gets any kind of venereal diseases. He's never affected by the massive amounts of cocaine and opium that he takes, until one day somebody does see the picture, and everything he's ever done slaps straight back at him, and of course that ends terribly. And of course,
he probably lived that chaotic life, and
well, he did
probably
everything,
picked up so many diseases,
all
used
of
so
that.
many drugs.
But added to that, he goes on these wild sprees in Victorian London. So he gets into massive fights and he can't die. So he's been stabbed through the heart multiple times, shot, the whole works. And he
Broken
just,
bones.
yeah. And then, of course, when somebody finally sees the portrait, everything slaps straight back into him all at once. A million different things that had gone wrong, and bam, he's done. So, yeah. Now, an interesting one which is far more modern, an adaptation of the novel Falling Angel, was the movie Angel Heart, where you had actually Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro in it, which was really cool. Set in New Orleans, a very twisty plot indeed. So Harry Angel, the private investigator, hired by one Louis Cypher to track down a missing singer who owes Cypher something. And after a while, you start to realize that the singer made a deal with the devil and is in hiding. And Louis Cypher is the devil that has hired Harry Angel to find the singer for payback. Very cool story, great movie, well worth it. And of course, I mean, the acting, De Niro and Mickey Rourke, right there, it's a win. Find it, watch
Robert
it.
De Niro.
Yes, it's not the newest movie out.
Yeah. No, I don't like him anymore.
Well, have you ever
No, I've
seen?
never actually liked him at all. But
Well,
recently he's gone so woke, so
well, yeah, there's that as well. But as an original actor, he was pretty good. Have you ever seen on a license plate, "Live Free or Die"? Now, it came out of New Hampshire, and in this story, there was a down on his luck farmer who got 7 years of prosperity in exchange for his soul. And 7 years later, the devil comes to collect. But the farmer has retained the service of an incredibly good lawyer. And Daniel Webster is his name. And Daniel Webster manages to beat the devil at his own game. So that's where the license plate comes from, interestingly enough, from an urban legend. So yeah, great stories and great tropes in a great many ways, and good fun all round. But let's talk real life and decide whether or not it actually happened. Now, one of the most famous sort of genres, as you know, has got to be in music. So, in Ezekiel 28:13, the workmanship of thy tabrets and thy pipes was prepared thee in the day that thou was created. Well, of course, we are talking about Lucifer, the morning star, created by God as the anointed cherub. One of the most powerful of the angelic beings, begot with the markings of instruments built into his very being. He was the director of the heavenly choirs, leading the songs of prayers. And of course, when Satan fell in rebellion against God, he did not lose those abilities. He kept the tabrets and pipes. So now, instead of using them to bring glory to the Lord, he uses it to turn God's creatures against the Creator. How art thou fallen from heaven, as we see in Isaiah 14:12-14, O Lucifer, son of the morning. So, who did? Well, Giuseppe Tartini, born 8th of April 1692 and died 26th of February 1770. During the 18th century, he was a violin virtuoso, and he composed the Devil's Trill Sonata, a piece so complicated that almost nobody can play it. It's that good. Now, one story says that Tartini actually had 6 fingers, which made him able to play these incredibly complicated musical pieces. The composition itself originated from the depths of Tartini's subconscious, and he claimed that the devil came to him in a dream and played a violin sonata that was beyond the realm of beauty. Now, in his own writings, he says, in the year of 1713, I dreamt I had made a pact with the devil for my soul, and everything went as I wished. My new servant anticipated my every desire. Among other things, I gave him my violin to see if he could play. How great was my astonishment on hearing a sonata so wonderful and so beautiful, played with such great art and intelligence, as I have never even conceived in my boldest flights of fancy. I was enraptured, transported, enchanted. My breath failed me, and I awoke. I immediately grasped my violin in order to retain, in part at least, the impression of my dream in vain, and the music which at this time I composed is indeed the best I ever wrote, and I still call it the Devil's Trill. But the difference between it and that which so moved me is so great I would have destroyed my instrument and said farewell to music forever, had it been possible for me to live without the enjoyment music affords me. So there's a guy that claimed he made a deal with the devil. Now, interesting that it came in a dream, and he was also accused by many of his contemporaries that no normal mortal man could play things that difficult. Is it true? We don't know. But considered by many to be an even greater violinist, and possibly the greatest to have ever lived, is Niccolò Paganini. And he was an imposing fellow, tall and thin, with a long-drawn face, with hollow cheeks and a sardonic smile beneath piercing eyes, a complexion white as chalk, and long tousled hair as dark as night. And dressed always in black he would play. And it said that as he played, he would flail and weave his body, his fingers cavorting over the strings, his shoulders contorted, giving him the appearance of a giant frantic bat. And it seemed to support the rumor that then started that he had made a deal with the devil. Now, interestingly, besides his ferocity and eccentric facial contortions, he did appear to be a man possessed as he played, and he created passages that could bring audiences to tears, and one of his most famous pieces was called La Strega, which means the witch's dance. Now, his incredible technical ability and rather weird appearance prompted many to say he had to have made a deal with the devil, or perhaps was the devil himself. And many, when they went to see him, though they couldn't resist the lure of his music, would make the sign of the cross to rid themselves of his evil powers. And the rumors spread. They said that his violin strings were made from the guts of murdered women. And some said they saw the devil standing next to him as he played. He was, in fact, in his life, in his death, refused last rites in the church, and his body was not allowed a Catholic burial in Genoa, which at the time was really a major, massive thing. To be denied that was awful. 4 years later, and an appeal to the Pope himself, they allowed his body to be returned to Genoa, but it still was not buried. And it was only in 1876 that he was given a burial in a cemetery in Parma. And given that he died in 1840, that was pretty hectic. But of course, that's the older times. What about the newer times? Well, we have a chap that was born in 1890 and who went to his eternal unrest in 1941. Ferdinand Jelly Roll Morton. And as he said, I invented jazz. And he was probably right. He was the New Orleans ragtime jazz composer's 1915 piece, possibly the first published jazz composition ever. And his talent was immense. But his talent seemed to come from a darker place. than the vibrant and upbeat music he composed. It's said that Jelly's godmother, Eulalie Echo, was a French-speaking Creole who practiced voodoo, and she sacrificed Jelly's soul to Satan as part of the black magic ritual in exchange for inhuman musical talent and fame. And his career was indeed prolific. He was the most supreme figure in America's jazz scene. In 1939, a record company, Victor, offered Jelly a recording contract as the leading composer and conductor of early jazz, and he could afford to wear diamonds in his teeth and on his sock supporters, high fashion for the time. And jazz, yes, jazz has always been associated with darker things as well. And yeah, he had a trademark smile with teeth studded with diamonds. I mean, you want to know where you get that bling grill from? He was the man. That was where it came from. And absolutely, he got his side of the deal. So when the time came, he had to keep up his side of the pack. 2 years after siding with Victor, the record company, his old voodoo godmother, Eulalie Echo, was dead. And Jelly's girlfriend, Anita Gonzalez, explained, Jelly always knew she had sold him to Satan and that when she died, he would die too, and she would take him down with her. And indeed, 2 months after Eulalie's passing in 1941, he did too at the age of 46. And it said on his deathbed, he was calling for holy oil to cheat the devil of his godmother's bargain. Now, there is a bit called the Devil's Interval, an interesting piece in the augmented fourth chord that signifies the blues scale. If you're into blues, when combined with this root note is the tonus diabolicus, the devil's interval. Now, interestingly, while blues is pretty modern, this chord isn't. When the late Roman Empire monks were notating Greek music, they put spiritual significance on the effect of different intervals. And it is thought that using this interval invoked sexual feelings and would conjure up Satan himself. And the use of this interval in music was prohibited by law in medieval times. But of course, as you know, in St. Louis Blues, the musician P.T. Wheatstraw was known as the devil's son-in-law and the high sheriff of hell. And Wheatstraw claimed that he had sold his soul to the devil at a crossroads in exchange for musical success. And, well, he cut upwards of 170 tracks for Arc, Bluebird and Decca labels before his death in 1941. At his peak in the 1930s, he was a superstar. He was born in 1902 and he died on the same day 39 years later, December 21st, after... Oh, there we go. Thanks, Tiki Toki.
What was that?
That was Tiki Toki saying that nobody's here and nobody's commenting and nobody's talking and nobody's on live. Yeah, we are. Daft thing. Nevertheless, thought of that. I know. So, his friends tried to unsuccessfully, with him, race their car through a crossroads with a freight train bearing down on them. And unfortunately, the devil got his due that day because they didn't make it. So, born and died on the same day. But of course, he is certainly not the only musician. In Rosedale, Mississippi, where the highways of 61 and 49 intersect, there are the crossroads. And some say that it is that crossroads where the Delta blues emerged and manifested in one of the greatest blues players of all, Robert Johnson. Legend goes that in the 1930s, Johnson ventured to the Mississippi crossroads and made a Faustian pact with the devil himself. And with guitar in hand and a hellacious chord, Johnson made a deal with the devil. So Johnson swaps his soul for guitar playing skill. Now, his new aptitude was immediate. Son House, the boyhood idol of Robert Johnson and one of the most highly regarded blues guitarists of the time, claimed that Johnson's metamorphosis went from a piss-poor guitar player, laughed off the stage, to a master of the blues. And Son House said he sold his soul to play like that. Following that infamous night, Johnson returned with formidable technique, a mastery of the blues that set songs that alluded to his infamous pact. Things like "Me and the Devil was walking side by side." That's one of his songs. And of course, when the devil did come for the fated musician, he was only 27. As legend has it, he was poisoned by his lover's jealous boyfriend. His death was a violent array of howling and convulsions, as he claimed frantically that he heard and saw ferocious, huge hellhounds coming for him before dying right there. And he was one of the most popular blues players ever, a wish he always wanted, but was he really poisoned? Or was what he saw real? Well, there's an interesting one to wonder about. Now, of course, another one, born 1942 and died in 1970. Another big favorite that this one you will have heard of. Jimi Hendrix, famous until today. Known, by the way, as Jimi Voodoo Child Hendrix, who had a keen interest in spiritism. Kwasi Dzidzornu, a conga player who often played with Hendrix, came from Ghana in West Africa, where his father was a voodoo priest. And it's been said that one of the first things that Dzidzornu asked Jimi was where he got his voodoo rhythm from, as many of Hendrix's signature rhythms were the same ones that he had heard played by his father in Ghana. Alan Douglas, Hendrix's road manager and producer, expressed concern for the musician's well-being. Says one of the biggest things about Jimi was that what he believed in. He believed he was possessed by a spirit, and I got to believe it myself. And that is what we had to deal with all the time. He was very humble about discussing it with people because he didn't want people to feel he was being pretentious and so on, but he believed it, and he was wrestling with it constantly. His long-term girlfriend, Fane Prigden, shared these worries. She said he always used to talk about some devil, something that was in him, and he didn't have control. He didn't know what made him act the way he acted, and what made him say things that he said, and songs, and different things like that that just came out of him, you know. It seems to me like he was tormented and torn apart, and that he really was. He was going to talk about us going down to Georgia and was obsessed with something really evil, having some root lady drive the demon out of him. But before he went, in 1970, at the age of 27, Hendrix died of asphyxia. Another one, of course, I'm sure that you have all heard of The Doors. There are things known and things unknown, and in between are the Doors, as said by the frontman himself, the self-proclaimed Lizard King, Jim Morrison. And he attributed much of the direction of his life to an incident that occurred when he was very young. Traveling with his family, he came upon an accident that had left several American Indians dead and scattered along the highway. And though his poetry on the Ghost song in 78, Morrison described what happened next. He says, the souls and the ghosts of those dead Indians, maybe one or two of them, were just running around and freaking out and just leapt into my soul, and they're still there. Possession by these spirits led to a life and an art obsessed with death and the occult. He says, cancel my subscription to the resurrection and send my credentials to the house of detention. As those are the lyrics to the song When the Music's Over by the Doors. Morrison frequently went under the moniker of Mr. Mojo Rising, an anagram of the letters in his name. Mojo, of course, is a religious term describing a shamanic power or an affiliation. The idea coming from the African root mo, which refers to dark or darkness. So, as you see in one of the interesting songs that comes up next, Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. As heads as tails, call me Lucifer, 'cause I'm in need of some restraint. So if you meet me, have some courtesy, have some sympathy and some taste. Use your well-earned politeness, or I'll lay your soul to waste, yeah? And that seems to describe many of these very, very interesting musicians. But they are not the only ones to make a deal. So
they all sound like rebellions.
They do, there is that. But they all died young. Maybe.
Yeah.
Robert Johnson, I mean, hell, born in 1911, died in 1938. Famous for his guitar skills, his amazing lyrics.
Today I was a bit surprised of the new rebellions.
Okay.
They look totally different than throughout the rebellions of history. Well, I don't know history that good, but I know, like in the 70s, 80s, you used to get like the punks.
Yeah.
People, they want to get tattoos. Guys, they want to get some piercings. Women, they want to cut their hair and wear pants. And
well, to be fair, I suppose you have to take into account to a certain amount what is it that you're not allowed to do. Now, if I go and get a tattoo today, nobody cares.
yeah,
It's fine. If a woman wears trousers today, nobody cares. It's fine. So it wouldn't be a rebellion. Whereas there was a time in history that if you were a woman and didn't wear a skirt, you were ostracized from society. I mean, my God, how dare you? So the punks rebelled by doing what they weren't allowed.
yeah. So today's rebellions looks totally different. I saw Joe Rogan on his broadcast, they were talking about it, about today's rebellions, and you won't believe what today's rebellions look like.
Well, here's a
They are
thing.
people who now believe in God. They read the Bible. They want to go to church. They're rebelling against the system.
But isn't that the case?
Yeah.
We go in cycles.
Mm.
It's sort of the thing. Back in the day, pink was a color reserved for men. Then it became only a woman thing, and if you were a man and wore pink, there was something wrong with you. Nowadays, everyone's like, no, but wearing pink's fine. Of course, it shows that you're a man. So, we go in cycles. Also, given how permissive society is today, what the hell do you do to rebel? I mean,
You read the Bible. That's what you do.
right? I mean, you've got two choices. You either read the Bible or you get surgery to turn yourself into a woman. Because if you get a
No, that seems like a normal thing.
well,
And
now
it's
it's getting
because
that
people,
way. Because we're
yeah,
having to go further. You know, you get a tattoo and everyone's like, cool. What can I do to rebel? Damn it, I'll become a different gender. Now, the problem is society has said, cool. Well, damn it, then
yeah.
I'll read the Bible.
Mm.
It's sort of weird. I don't know. It's interesting. It's something that is hard to imagine. But to be fair,
See, they want to go against the system, and currently getting surgery is the system stands with that. The system actually encourages it. Go and get your
exactly,
genitals.
exactly.
Yeah,
So, in many ways, the idea of rebellion is utterly not the same as the idea of, say, making a deal with the devil at all. Because this is a thing to gain. Whether or not it's a good idea or succeeds is another story, but this is about personal betterment in some way, whereas rebellion is you're trying to tell society it's wrong. So are we then going to start seeing a swing back where the youth will tell parents that they're all bad because they're accepting and we need to go back to a stricter life?
yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that still they want a stricter life because I'm talking about these people that think about socialists. They want strict policies on guns and stuff like that, and
Oh,
that's
yeah. Well, it's gotten so bad that in England they've just passed a law that has made it illegal to own a blank firing gun. So in other words, like a
oh,
cap gun, it doesn't actually function, but it's illegal to own one.
yeah,
And you're like,
strange things.
how crazy do you have to be that you need a law for a toy?
Yeah. Well, they've also made kitchen knives with sharp points illegal now
What?
because because they've removed all the guns and stuff. So people they grab kitchen knives with sharp points and then stab you to death. So now they've made it illegal to sell kitchen knives with sharp points.
Do they really? Do people really do that? Because I don't think they do. I think this is the government proving that they can squash you down as much as possible and you will do nothing about it.
Yeah, no,
Because I'm going to put it to you, and tell me I'm wrong, but in my experience, having been a crime reporter for over 20 years, criminals are not noted for obeying the law.
yes.
I'm just throwing it out there. So if you make it illegal for me to own any kind of weaponry or whatever, if I'm a criminal, I'm probably not going to obey. That's why I'm a criminal.
Yes. And just like with gun laws, making gun laws strict, all you're doing is you're telling the law-abiding citizens you're not allowed to have guns because criminals are still going to have guns.
And better yet, if I'm a criminal and I want to rob you, it means that, great, there's no chance of you hurting me. Whereas back in the day, it was a known thing that if a criminal entered your house, you were legally allowed to put him down and everybody had a gun, which meant I'd think twice before robbing you just in case.
Yeah.
So by and large, yeah, it's a socialist political domination of the law-abiding citizen, and it's dumb. There's my opinion for you, straight up. Take it or leave it as you will. Because come on. Come on. But nevertheless, maybe somebody in politics did make a deal with the devil because they're getting away worldwide with everything.
Yeah, no, very possible. I mean, why would you not want to go into politics if you can make a deal with the devil?
Absolutely. Now, have you heard of the composer Robert Johnson?
Robert Johnson.
Well, he was a chap who, back in the day, 17th century, was a pretty famous composer, to the degree he even wrote music that was used for Shakespeare plays. Interesting. So he was important. He was a Scottish composer, born in 1583, died in 1633. He was a lutist from the late Tudor and early Jacobean eras, sometimes referred to as Robert Johnson II because of the earlier composer Robert Johnson as well. But he actually worked with William Shakespeare and provided music for Shakespeare's plays, which was, you didn't have background music, you had some bugger on the lute playing along with them. So in 1594, Robert's father died, and in 1596 he joined the household of George Carey, the second Baron of Huntsdon, as an apprentice. He's assumed to have been around 13 at the time, typical age to begin apprenticeship, though they're not sure. Carey and his wife Elizabeth Spencer were patrons of the famed lutist and composer John Dowland. And of course, the young lad was inspired and learnt. So as you can imagine, he was employed eventually in the royal court of James I, where a number of lutists, you didn't have the radio to turn on, so you had your personal band, you know. He wrote the music for Oberon the Fairy Prince, for the memorable Masque of the Middle Temple and Lincoln's Inn, which apparently was a big deal at the time. He served in the court of Charles I, remaining on royal payroll until the year of his death. He wrote a lot of compositions and more, and his stuff was done at Blackfriars, which is pretty damn cool. But according to stories, his skill and his popularity was absolutely due to the fact he made a deal with the devil. And that's how he managed to get all of his famed connections and money. Was it true? We're not sure, but it's one of the earlier stories of how musicians made deals with the devil in order to get somewhere further, if you will. So, interestingly enough, his namesake, the founder of Black Entertainment Television, was a pioneering executive in the media, and his name was Robert Johnson as well. Now, he as well became very important and very rich, which in around 1979 was quite interesting for a black person in America. And he set up the first African American owned cable network. And sir?
No, I just wanted to see if I was correct with it. So, yeah, knives was banned in the UK since September 2024. Yeah, so it's illegal to possess kitchen knives.
What a bunch of idiots.
Pointy tip kitchen knives. So you can only have round tip knives.
What a bunch of idiots. See, this is why we live in the best country in the world. We may have problems, but at least we're not all drooling idiots. My God. So, he managed...
4 years. You can get up to 4 years jail time.
Yet, if you're an illegal immigrant and rape 3 or 4 women, you get let off, no problem.
Yeah.
The UK is crazed. I would never go there. So, Robert Johnson eventually sold his company for $3 billion, which at the time was wealth beyond wildest dreams of imagining. He even bought the Charlotte Bobcats in 2002, and his businesses were just successes and successes and successes in industries that really and truly an African American would never get into.
What year was that about?
Well, he went on till about 2002, 2003.
Okay.
So, pretty damn good. And then, of course, in addition to that, just because, after all, you have Robert A. Johnston, same name, a Jungian analyst and author known for his books on psychology, also said to have maybe made a deal with the devil. His books have sold more than 3 million copies, which for psychology books is pretty damn good. He went and studied in 1945 in Stanford University. So interesting. He was a student of Krishnamurti, of all people, which is quite interesting. He studied at the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, where he met the wife of Jung himself, herself, and she was his principal analyst. Interesting fellow, hugely popular and hugely skilled. Went around giving lectures and more. very, very interesting considering how successful he was, even getting a Lifetime Achievement Award and more, and died at the age of 97, having been a prolific writer, and all of his books were successful. He died in 2018, but they say that he was successful as he was, again, because he made a deal. So it seems it's not just the musical industry. So, now, we've gone through varying people, especially musicians who were supposedly great and amazing and achieved all sorts of things, but are they the only ones? Well, we have one which doesn't want to come up and is going to annoy the hell out of me. Let me Oliver Cromwell. Now, Cromwell, as we know, was a major player in the wars between the Protestants and the Catholics in Ireland more than anything. And in 1651, the legend has him at the Battle of Worcester selling his soul to the devil for 7 years of victories. And of course, he did have 7 years of victories, and then he did die. And apparently the devil collected his soul in a storm. It was probably a story developed after the Restoration, more than likely any truth, because Cromwell naturally was a national villain in Ireland for what he did. And of course, the fight between Catholicism and Protestantism has gone on until practically today. So on the eve of the Battle of Worcester, in Perry Wood, Cromwell met with the devil and sold his soul. The deal is precisely 7 years, and they say that he died on the same day, exactly 7 years later, September 3rd. Is it true? Well, probably not. It's absolutely a Faustian echo. It shows the period's fascination with the literal devil. And you will find writings of the time, theologians focused far more on Satan than on anything else. Sin was the way at the time. And of course, it was useful, like many other Civil War figures, to demonize certain political peoples. We see it today. So maybe it was just a coincidence. But nevertheless, it was a story, and it shows us a different sort of person than a musician or such. Now, there are many other stories. The Brothers Grimm record one called The Smith and the Devil, which is again one where the smith gains the power to weld any materials together. And then, of course, he uses the power to stick the devil onto an immovable object so that he can get out of the bargain, which is pretty cool. Now, this is from around 1812 that this was written. So you had that as a possibility. According to the story, the blacksmith is a motif of folklore throughout Europe, so usually associated with malevolence. The idea of who's the bad guy is a smith, which is very interesting because in Ethiopia, smiths are very often considered to be weir hyena shapeshifters that make bargains with the devil. So, now many tales about smiths will say that they make pacts to obtain fire and the means to do perfect forging. So this is a common theme and may have come from stories told as much as 6,000 years ago, even in the Bronze Age, which I think is very possibly true in its origins. But again, in the tale, he tricks the devil and gets out of the agreement entirely because he used the power the devil gave him to catch the devil. So the stories are very old, and who is the protagonist becomes whoever the current culture sees as the local superhero, if you will. And if you think about it, it is very true to say that the superstars of our time are very often musicians. So there's that. We do know that there were people like the Brigadier General Jonathan Moulton, who passed away in 1787, who played a very, very important role in New Hampshire and, of course, in the wars going around at the time. So he was involved in all sorts of things. He was he was an apprentice cabinet maker in 1745, won his freedom, worked as a silversmith and formed the Moulton and Towel Silversmithing Company. And he left his silversmithing trade to his partner, which still exists, the Towel Silversmithing Company, but he became the captain of a ranger company in the New Hampshire militia, and he was in the New England Army under William Pepperell that took Fortress Louisbourg from the French in the King George's War, and he fought against the Ossipee Indians that allied with the French around Lake Winnipesaukee, until they were killed and driven off into Canada. During one winter, the scout from Dover, Captain Moulton, and his men ambushed 6 warriors on the ice lake, and 5 of them were killed in the first volley and the 6th ran away, followed by Moulton's very trope-related massive black dog that attacked and killed the fleeing warrior. And the Treaty of the Aix-la-Chapelle ended the war in 1748. Though, of course, it was only 6 years later that the war between Britain and France then broke out. So he married and had 11 children, so busy fellow, and became a importer, and then rejoined the war in the French and Indian War, and once again was a captain, and eventually rose in rank to general. He had a town named after him, Moultonborough, but nevertheless, they said that things got weird in 1769 when his mansion burned to the ground. And they said that this was the start of the legend of him being the Yankee Faust. So during the events that led up to the American Revolution, he was elected as moderator of the Hampton Town meetings, chosen as a member of the Committee for Safety, appointed as a delegate to the Patriot Assembly of Exeter, commissioned as the colonel of the 3rd New Hampshire Regiment. His wife died of smallpox and he married again and fathered 4 more children. So 11 with the first wife and 4 more later. So a busy lad.
I love that song, by the way.
Which one?
You just mentioned a date. You said
In 1814?
1769.
Oh. Yes.
Was that the date you mentioned?
It was indeed.
Okay. Do you know what song I'm talking about?
I'm guessing I've got it wrong because I was thinking 18, not 17. So which song are you talking about?
Okay.
Hey? Which song were you talking about?
I wish I was a punk rocker.
Ah. Punk rocker in 1769? I think not, sir.
Yeah, no, I also don't think. No, but isn't that what thing like?
69, yes. But
Wish I was a punk
1969.
rocker.
Yes, that's 1969. I wish I were a punk rocker in 1969.
Yeah, I was born too late in a world that doesn't care.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So yeah, this Boykie Morton was success after success after success, and pretty impressive. And he got into all kinds of arguments over things, but he got rich. He got really rich. And he died at the age of 61 in 1787. But weirdly enough, his body was moved before burial and his tombstone disappeared. And he became the stuff of legend. When his house burnt down, it was said he made a deal with the devil and had outsmarted him, saying that he would sell his soul to the devil if the devil would fill his boots with gold coins on the 1st of every month. Then he found the largest set of boots that he could in the entire province. And when the devil returned to fill the boots with gold, no matter how many coins he poured in the boots, they would not fill, because he had carefully cut the soles off and put them over a hole in the floor, so the gold coins kept pouring in. The devil, after being outsmarted, burnt his house down, and the gold coins disappeared in revenge. In the second story, the ghost of Moulton's first wife appears on his wedding night and takes the ring off his finger of his new wife Sarah as the two are in bed together. The finally legendary story, a pallbearer at Moulton's funeral opened his coffin to find it empty, replaced with a box of cold coins with the devil stamped on them, and that he was buried with neither a body or a tombstone, and the grave is unknown. Maybe, but it's a good story nevertheless. We also have the story of the Chasse-Galerie, the flying canoe, which is a French-Canadian tale of lumberjacks from camps working around the Galenue River, who made a deal with the devil in a variant of the Wild Hunt style story, which was written between 1848 and 1906 sometime, and it was published in Century magazine in 1892. So in the story, there was a rich nobleman named Gallery who loved to hunt, and he loved it so much that he refused to go to church on Sunday. As a punishment for this sin, He was condemned to fly forever through the night skies, chased by galloping horses and howling wolves. When French settlers arrived in Canada, they swapped the stories with natives, and the tale of the gallery was combined with a First Nations legend about a flying canoe. In that time, bark canoes became associated with French-Canadian culture, where some of the earliest people said that when they landed on the banks of the Hudson River, people had never seen bark canoes before. But after a night of heavy drinking on New Year's Eve, a group of voyagers working at a remote timber camp want to visit their sweetheart some 100 leagues away. That's about 500 kilometers. And the only way to make the journey and back in time for the next morning is to run the chasse galerie, which means to make a pact with the devil so that their canoe can travel through air quickly. But the travelers must not mention God's name or touch the cross of any church steeple as they fly past. Either rule is broken, the devil takes their souls. With this in mind, the men promise not to touch another drop of rum to keep their heads clear. The crew take their places and the canoe begins to rise and they start to paddle. Far below they see the Gatineau River and the villages and the shiny church steeples and even the lights of Montreal. The bewitched canoe eventually touches down near a house where New Year's Eve festivities are in full swing, and no one questions their arrival, of course. They're embraced with open arms and are dancing and celebrating merrily with everyone else. But after spending time with their sweethearts, they notice it's late and know they must leave to get back to the camp in time for work. But as they fly through the moonless night, it becomes apparent that their navigators have been drinking as he steers the canoe on a dangerously unsteady course. While passing over Montreal, they narrowly miss running into a church steeple, and soon after the canoe ends up stuck in a snowdrift. The drunken navigator starts swearing and taking the Lord's name in vain. Terrified the devil will take their souls, the men bind and gag their friend and elect another to steer. But the navigator breaks his bonds and begins swearing again. The crew become more and more shaken at the possibility of losing their souls, and they accidentally steer their canoe near a tall pine tree, and the men spill out the canoe and are knocked unconscious. Now the ending changes story to story, but in most versions the men are sentenced to fly the canoe through hell, and they appear in the sky every New Year's Eve. And in all but one version, the men do escape the terms of the devil, but some versions say no, they didn't necessarily all succeed in that regard. Some say that the devil himself was a navigator and he was trying to break the rules by steering back and forth. But the story has stayed. You make a deal, you have to obey the rules, and not everybody does, and so on and so forth, and what might happen. And so, of course, the story has remained and part of Acadian legend. But we can go even further. There was a fellow known as Theophilus the Penitent, a saint who died in 538, a cleric of the 6th century church who made a deal with the devil to gain ecclesiastical position. Now, it's interesting that it's a priest doing it. Eutychus of Adana claimed to have actually been an eyewitness to the events, and he is the first to record Theophilus' story. He is a real person that did exist, but most of the story is said to be apocryphal. He is a saint of the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church, So there. He was the archdeacon of Adana in Cilicia, part of the Byzantine Empire, and was unanimously elected to be a bishop. And when out of humility he turned the position down and another person was elected in his stead, the new bishop, based on malicious and unfounded rumors, unjustly deprived Theophilus as his position of archdeacon. Theophilus was upset and decided he was going to get revenge. So he sought out the aid of a necromancer who helped him contact Satan. And in exchange for his aid, Satan demanded that Theophilus renounce Christ and the Virgin Mary in a contract signed with his own blood. Theophilus did this, and the devil gave him the position as bishop. Later on, fearful for his soul, Theophilus repented and prayed to the Virgin for forgiveness. And after 40 days of fasting, the Virgin appeared to him and verbally chastised him. He begged for forgiveness, and she promised to intercede with God on his behalf. He fasted a further 30 days, after which the Virgin Mary appeared to him and granted him absolution. But Satan did not want to let go, and 3 days later he awoke to find the damning contract on his chest. He took the contract to the legitimate bishop and confessed all he had done, and the document was burned, and Theophilus died from sheer joy to be free of the burden of the contract. Now, of course, this is a tale that, who knows, maybe it's true, maybe it wasn't, who's to ever say, but it was popular at the time, and it was retold and retold for a long time. You will find it in art as well, and even recorded in stained glass windows in certain places. So who's to say? But it seems whoever you are, even if you're a holy person, you might very well be susceptible to the devil. Now, when we did our ghost stories, one of the famous ghosts for us South Africans is, of course, the Flying Dutchman. Now, it is said that the ghost ship can be seen off Cape Town, and there are several versions of the story, but in one, the captain, Bernard Fokker, the Dutch captain who was the master of the ship, was renowned for the speed of his voyages between Europe and the Dutch East Indies. And they said that this was because Fokker was in league with the devil. And when the captain's ship never returned from its final voyage, it was that the devil had come in a violent storm and collected both the captain and his crew. So the Flying Dutchman sails the seas off Cape Town to this day because of Fokker's deal with the devil. Maybe, maybe not. But if you think that good holy people don't get involved, think again. Because this is the story of Pope Sylvester II, also known as Gerbert of Aurillac. A dedicated scholar and teacher, he was a keen fan of mathematics and astronomy, and he became Pope in 999. Southern years up there. And he used his new authority to promote his interests. He is credited with popularizing Hindu Arabic numerals in Europe and the use of, the abacus. He owned his own astrolabe and collected manuscripts and even wrote a paper on Euclidean geometry. This was 1,000 years ago, and not everybody regarded his scientific curiosity as positive. And when it became known that mathematical knowledge came from the Arab world, they were the bad guys of the time. They said he was a sorcerer and necromancer in league with the devil, who had not only provided him with magical powers, but helped him secure the papacy. They were propagated stories that went all round, particularly from one particular cardinal who didn't like him, Buno, who wrote that he died a horrid and a miserable death. And between his dying breaths, he begged with his hands and his tongues, with which, by offering them to demons, he had dishonored God and wished they were cut out and cut to pieces. Was it really true? Well, hard to say. I mean, the story came from 999, a long time ago. And there was a lot of politics in the church at the time, so maybe, maybe not. But the stories go on. I mean, we have people throughout history. Philippe Moussard, the 19th century composer, was said to be a person who got his skill from the devil. Certainly his music was pretty amazing and very risque for the time, such as the galops, the quadrilles, and of course the French can-can, which at the time was associated with prostitution and hugely scandalous. So he's all but forgotten, but they say he got popularity through being in league with the devil. King James VI and First of Scotland and England, respectively, was a little bit obsessed with witchcraft and black magic, and even wrote his own dissertation on necromancy in 1589. His wife, Anne of Denmark, was endangered by a storm at sea, and the king became convinced that the contrary winds were the result of witchcraft. Consequently, the number and intensity of witch trials significantly increased. Most notorious of these were the North Berwick trials that went over 2 years and led to 70 people being accused of witchcraft, 2 of them seen as ringleaders. One was a healer named Agnes Sampson, who confessed, bearing in mind that confession at the time was obtained with torture, to 50 charges of witchcraft. The other being a local schoolmaster named John Fian, who admitted to making a pact with the devil and acting as register and scholar to many budding witches in the region. Both confessions obtained under torture resulted in their execution. So, deals with the devil, but were they? It seems there's a lot of politics involved in that regard. Another one accused was Gilles the Rais, a famous fellow and nobleman, a hero of France during the 100 Years' War, served as a comrade in arms to Joan of Arc herself. But it's said that secretly he was a serial killer who enjoyed torturing and murdering children. In September of 1440, he was arrested after almost a decade-long killing spree, where they said he killed over 140 victims. During his trial, Bros de Race and several of his servants and accompaniments confessed to deeds under torture. He was also further accused of Satanism and summoning the devil and his demonic minions, and said he offered the blood and organs of his victims in exchange for knowledge and power in the dark arts. Naturally, he was branded a heretic, an apostate, a sorcerer, and a sodomite, an evoker of evil spirits, diviner, murderer of innocent children, criminal, backslider, and idolater who had deviated from the faith and was ill-disposed, which sounds like a pretty hefty thing. He was, unsurprisingly, executed. Thank you, Endless Thoughts, for those kind gifts. I appreciate that greatly. Now, an interesting one. We remember as a fake story, but the story is based on truth. Now, the story side was written by Mary Shelley and is the famous novel Frankenstein. But what you might not know is Castle Frankenstein really exists. And one of their ancestors was in fact a mad scientist. So here is the true story that the story of Frankenstein was based on. Johannes Conrad Dippel, who lived in Castle Frankenstein in the late 17th and early 18th century, started as a theologian, but developed an obsession with alchemy and trying to develop the elixir of life. And he's going to come up again in the next live that I intend to do on alchemy, so that you know. And he even worked with cadavers to practice soul transference. Tales of his experiments shocked and terrified, and even his peers were put off by his work. His contemporary and former friend, Emanuel Swedenborg, decried him as a most vile devil who attempted wicked things. For Dippel, nothing was off limits. So it doesn't really come as a surprise that people believed he sold his soul to the devil. His fate we are not totally sure of. But he was the basis for the idea of Dr. Frankenstein and his monster. And yes, you can even go and visit Castle Frankenstein in Germany today. Who would have thought the truth behind the legend? So yeah, cool stuff, cool stuff. So what do you think? Can you make a deal with the devil? Have people done so? And did they get all that they asked for? Or was it worth it? What do you think?
I don't know. I wouldn't. I mean, I can probably try, but I don't think they want anything to do with me.
Well, there's a point as well. Would the demons want anything to do with us? Quick answer there, so that I don't get into trouble. I was busy doing all sorts just today. I'm preparing to get things sorted. I'm one of the team that helps run the local dojo, and I'm also hoping at least to start up teaching staff as well. So I've been running around and not doing as much busyness stuff that I intend. Thank you for that gift, my dear. So yeah, I have not been on TikTok doing my checking of what has been posted, which I'm guilty for, and I do apologize. Especially seeing as people like your dear self, Endless Thoughts, do support so greatly. I will go check that video. And guys, don't forget, the channel works because of those who are here. So make sure that you absolutely do show your support to each other. Like and follow everyone's videos. We do need each other's support. I am guilty of not in the last couple of days. I will correct that. I do apologize. I do try to keep up, but I am sometimes awful. But yeah, I think that the idea of making a deal. Look, do I believe you can? I don't know. Do I believe people will try? Absolutely, because that's a very human thing to do. If a shortcut can be done, I think people would. I think you would agree with that, Spooky, that whether or not
Yeah, I
it's
mean, a
true.
lot of the things you said, I would also grab those deals.
But would it be worth it? I suppose it depends on whether or not you believe you have an immortal soul. If you don't, then, well, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a fair question, is it not? It would depend as well on whether or not you believe there is something out there that you can make a deal with. And of course, very interestingly, how is it any different from making a deal with God? I mean,
Yeah,
isn't
no,
that,
that's what I was also wondering. I mean,
well,
if you do have an immortal soul, then your soul has to go somewhere,
true?
and either to God or either to the devil. And who knows? Maybe God isn't the nice guy everybody thinks he is.
Well, even if he is, here's my thing. Is it right to be bargaining with God? I
Yeah,
mean, that's kind of really the other side of the question. Should you bargain with God? You know, is that not possibly also a problem or a sin? I don't know. Which means that no, you shouldn't pray per se for things. You should just praise and let God do whatever if you are a believer in Christianity, because
if you
that's
do
how it works.
bargain with him, if you do bargain with him, wouldn't he be guilty as well?
There's a question. Hell yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. When you put it like that, I don't, yeah. Otherwise, is it not unfair? Must we therefore punish God for our sins as much as punish us? I don't know. It makes it a very weird question. It,
Yeah. Otherwise, he's corrupt and he's a bigot.
but there again, everyone says God is omnicognizant. So he knew when he made you that you were going to sin. And he made you anyway. So is he not liable for the sins you've committed?
Yeah. He made you to sin.
It's a fair question. The other big thing, and you see this often in legalist type things, the devil made me do it. I mean, who was that cyclist? Was he a cyclist? Yeah, he was a cyclist, the South African bugger that went off and shot his. No, was he a cyclist or a runner? He shot his girlfriend through the bathroom door. His
I
defense,
don't know, but I'm guessing there would probably be a bunch of stories similar to that. The devil made me do
yeah,
it.
his defense was the devil made me do it. And I was like, did he though?
Yeah, I don't think the court would take that as a excuse.
Well, he's still in jail, isn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's
I
been
mean,
often the
okay, the
case.
devil made you do it, but you still pulled the trigger.
Well, this is the thing. And this was an argument that we had when we did ethics, when I studied ethics, that does it matter your reasoning. So, okay, point number one. In proper law, there is a distinction made between manslaughter and murder. Okay? And then you get degrees to murder. Okay? So, if you are driving down the road and you hit a child who ran across in front of the road and killed the child, you are guilty of killing the child. But you never meant to do it. Okay? Now, if I find that when you were driving, you were guilty of impairing your own ability for some reason, okay? So you drank before doing it, I can charge you with manslaughter. You didn't intend to kill the child, but you are culpable because you drank and then drove. That's manslaughter. It's not murder because you didn't intend to do it, but you're still guilty. If it was entirely the child's fault, you're not guilty of manslaughter, it's just a tragic accident. Okay, so level 1 is manslaughter. You committed the act but didn't mean to. Murder starts when you intended to do it. Okay. Now, if you then make the... Say again?
You can finish your point.
Well, my question is, if you did something that we consider to be a crime, does your reasoning matter? As long as you intended something that resulted in the crime, you're guilty.
Okay. So can I give you a different example?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so the other day I saw a guy being murdered, right, in front of a firing squad.
Ah.
So now, they got paid to kill this guy.
There again, one of the cunning things that people did in order to remove intent from execution was, so you got 10 guys, they're all going to shoot you, right? 9 of them have got blanks. 1 has a bullet. None of them know who it is. They do not load their firearms. So nobody knows who committed the act, and therefore none of them can be blamed for doing it.
Okay, but...
Loophole.
But you can see from which gun it came from, because you can do some detective work and look at...
Yeah, nowadays. But in modern terms, what they do is they've got 4 people pressing a button to administer a lethal injection, but only 1 button actually does it. Now,
this was in America, so I think it happened last year in 2025.
Oh, I can believe that. But
they
now
executed the guy through. So they shot him dead.
Yeah.
So there was about a group of 4 or 5 guys. He was standing against the wall, and then they just shot a bunch of bullets at him.
Yes.
But I also wanted to know, like, would they still go to jail for it?
Well,
not jail. I mean,
go to hell for murder. This is the question, because you've got the question between action, guilt, and intention. So you were driving down the road, minding your own business, a kid ran in front, you were completely sober, you didn't intend it, you were driving the car that killed the kid. Can I say you are guilty?
No, the car killed her.
Because you had no intention. It was the kid's fault. He ran out.
Yeah.
Okay, scenario two, you went off, got really wasted at a party, and then drove home knowing you should not have. And therefore you were impaired, and so you hit the kid and killed him.
You
Now,
didn't want to kill the kid, but
you were
because of your
still guilty.
negligence, you killed him.
Yes. So, can I claim that because you didn't intend it, you're guilty and must be punished, but you're not a murderer and therefore haven't committed the sin of murder and won't go to hell? Whereas it being different from, I don't like you, I decided I was going to take you out, went ahead and did it because I intended to do it and therefore am guilty.
Okay. And I've got some questions now as
Ask
well.
them, ask them, ask them.
On top of those questions,
Yes.
like, so if you do go to hell, do you then stay there forever, or do you maybe have a time period, like you get so many years of punishment? Because I know you didn't kill the kid on purpose, but because of your negligence, the kid did die, and you should get some sort of punishment, just like getting jail time. Jail time, you won't go to jail for murder, but you will still serve some time.
Well, according to at least Catholic belief, so this is not necessarily agreed by everybody, but according to Catholic belief, that's where you get the idea of purgatory from. So, on one side, you are fully holy and good and lovely, you go to heaven. On the other side, you're a bag basket, you deserve hell, and you go to hell. Now, whichever of the two sides you go, you stay there. So people obviously then said, but hang on, what if I've made a few mistakes, so I'm not good enough to get into heaven, but I'm not bad enough to go to hell for eternity. So you have purgatory. Purgatory is the place where you go to and you are punished by being denied heaven for a period as your sins are cleansed away and you're now pure enough to enter heaven. So it's like you can see heaven but can't have it yet. But after a certain amount of punishment, you will go to heaven. As opposed to the guys who go to hell, because once you go to hell, you stay there. There's no come back from. So you've got heaven, hell, and purgatory.
Let me think. Do I want to go to hell or to heaven? So let's say hell, I don't have to follow any rules. I can sleep with as many girls as I want. I can party and do just whatever I want to do. If I want to go to heaven, I have to be on my knees. I have to follow orders.
Well,
Yeah.
assumedly, while your description of heaven is accurate, no, if you go to hell, it's total suffering. Nothing good. You won't. It's not about your. You don't get to do nothing. You just get punished and punished and punished relentlessly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
But
can't
if you go
fight
to
this.
heaven,
No, I don't
yes.
want to be punished. I'll do whatever I want to do. So that's not an option.
So, but heaven doesn't exactly sound like a good option either. I've got to be honest. You get to serve eternally on your knees.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great joy there. I don't know. Have you ever read the Divine Comedy by Dante?
One comedy.
Okay, so Dante wrote 3 books. Okay, Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. Heaven, purgatory, and hell. And in those books, he describes the journey of a man who is allowed to visit heaven, purgatory, and hell. So it was a sort of story warning of the time as to what's going on in each. And there they describe how it all works. And that's where we get the idea of the circles of hell with different levels of punishment, and the idea of circles of heaven with the different levels of glory. I forget how Purgatorio worked out. I haven't read them in quite a few years. I do own them. But Dante's Inferno is the most quoted because everyone loves an awful story. I know of almost nobody that's read Paradiso or Purgatorio, but a lot of people have read Inferno, which tells you a lot about people, I suppose. And there are different circles to hell, getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And dependent on what you do or did in life, you go to a different circle where you get an appropriate punishment. Interestingly enough, lawyers are punished worse than murderers. Why? I don't know. Apparently being a lawyer is worse than being a murderer.
I can imagine some lawyers might be worse than murderers, because lawyers, they help get the murderers free.
There is that argument, and I think partly that was the point that Dante had when writing his books, was he was trying to make a point that it's bad enough doing a thing, it's worse if you defend it. So, yes. But yeah, in terms of how much guilt is guilt. And I think part of the problem in many ways is that we love it greatly to be able to condemn another person, to judge another person. And in fact, if you do read the Bible, one of the key rules given is judgment is God's alone. You have no right. Do not judge or you will be judged. But how many people do you know judge? I'm just saying.
I don't think I know a single person that do not judge.
There you are. So, yeah, in that regards, I think we love the idea of saying, oh, you know what Spooky did? He's going to hell for it. Really? You don't know nothing. Even your own religious scriptures tells you it's not your job and you know nothing. So maybe if we judged less and tried to be nice, we would have a better world. But nevertheless, that is all I've got on people who made a deal with the devil and, well, at least allegedly, got all they wanted and more, and then suffered terribly for it. So, don't know. Let me know what you think. And in non-Abrahamic religions where you don't have the devil.
Another question.
Yes.
Like making a deal with the devil, but what if you're ignorant and you don't really understand what you are doing, and you're just a little bit like duff? So
okay, I will give you an answer to that. I will give you an answer to that. And this is allegedly a true story. I think it's become greatly apocryphal, but nevertheless, it's a great story. So, when the first Europeans went to the Australians, in this version that I heard, it's told in many countries, they said to them, we want to teach you all about Christianity. And the Australians said, okay, and if we teach you about Christianity, you will go to heaven and you will have all the goodness in the world God will love you. They thought, well, this sounds pretty good. And then one clever bugger said, tell me something. You've come to me and taught me these great things, so now I get to go to heaven. But my father who died before you arrived, he was never taught about them. What happened to him? So they said, no, well, he can't be judged by these standards because he never knew about Christ. So the Aboriginal said, so if you never came and taught me about Christ, I would have gone to heaven anyway because I was ignorant. Whereas now that you've come and taught me, I could very easily go to hell if I don't do things your way.
Yeah.
And that kind of
Sounds like
sums it
that
all
story.
up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. We argued that in the seminary, in our theological debate on theological ethics, for literally 3 weeks and never came up with an answer. Maybe teaching people about God is a bad thing because it only leads to hell. And if you were innocent of hell, it would have been fine.
Yeah, you would have just traveled around and be
Yeah.
God's creation.
Well, somebody pointed out to me the other day, and I'm not saying I support this. I'm not saying this is good. I'm merely mentioning this as an opinion that was thrown out to me by an atheist talking to me, and I'm no way trying to be offensive. I'm just saying this was said to me, and it made me go, wait, what? Why the hell are you following the beliefs of a Middle Eastern death cult that specifically says in its scriptures it's for one group of people only? You have to be a child of Israel, which means you have to be a Jew. Jesus was a Jew, not a Christian. He was a Jew. Christianity developed afterwards. It's a religion that comes entirely out of the Middle East and was for the Jewish people. And it's ultimately a death cult where you walk around wearing a corpse on an instrument of torture around your neck. For why?
Because you were told so?
I don't know. I don't have answers, but it's a question. And I was raised Protestant. My parents converted to Catholic, and me along with them because I was little. So, you know, we did it because mommy and daddy did it, and I was Catholic for years and years and years.
Yeah. Well, luckily, my parents didn't care, really. So they were believers, but they never
Made
forced me
you.
to
Oh, mine
read the
definitely
Bible.
did. Sunday you went to church. Hell yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I went sometimes when my mom wanted to go and wanted me to give her some extra support when she goes to the church. But now she doesn't go to church, but she does Skype
God,
every
that's the funniest
weekend.
thing in the world. The whole
Yeah,
point of church is gathering in community. I go on Skype.
yeah,
I don't understand religion in many ways. I mean, I studied it for years and years and years. I have degrees in it. And I can honestly say I don't understand formal religion. It is the weirdest thing in the
yeah.
world to me. So,
She does Skype twice a week
at least she does
on
it.
Thursdays and Sundays. Yeah,
You know, I mean, kudos, she does it. God bless her.
yeah. I also don't see the point because when she's been doing this for years, how much is she learning in time? Guessing probably nothing.
I don't know, maybe you earn points with God. I don't know. I wonder. At the end of the day, I still say your first job is to be human. And if you can't manage that, no amount of religion will help you.
Yeah.
But there you are. Deals with the devil. Deals with God. Who's to say? Comment, like, share, subscribe, do whatever. But we will be back tomorrow with something else, something weird, something wonderful,
I
something
think
interesting.
God is the good guy because he probably won the argument.
Now you are heading into dangerous territory, and I waggle my finger at you. So I'm not saying you're wrong. But yeah, it's a fair question. And I compare it to something which came up the other day, that the woke in America are fighting very hard for free speech, free expression, and freedom. And that's why they had to shoot Charlie Kirk.
No,
Wait, what?
no, they all are mentally ill people. The woke parade.
I mean, it blows my mind.
It's
But there
freedom
you,
of speech for them, but not for you.
that I find to be pretty much standard. One of our greatest powers as human beings is the ability to sustain cognitive dissonance. And I'm going to end things there. Go and look it up.
Yeah.
And I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Good
Do you have a
stuff.
subject?
I do. I have a good one. But it's a weird one, just for fun.
Okay.
But
Then
if
I'll
you,
catch you tomorrow.
you will indeed. So much thanks to you. Much thanks to Endless Thoughts. I hope that you are having a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for the support. Thanks again. Spooky, look after yourself.
Cool. Cheers.
Ciao,
Have
ciao,
a good
ciao.
night.